Welcome to Factor the Future podcast. This little podcast is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. One, it wasn't originally intended to be a podcast, but during one of my executive roundtables that I host about every 2 weeks, I had invited one of the guests that had been part of the podcast, Christian Torre. And our conversation led right down into this interesting dialect that I asked Christian if I could use our recording and use it as one of our podcasts. And he was overwhelmingly excited that we could do that again. So if you remember, he was an earlier host or a guest on one of our podcasts. And, he was doing some amazing things with different softwares. And what Christian and I get into is talking about how AI is supporting some of the manufacturing and the workforce. Christian shares the development of TrueGem, which is an HR software tool designed to create defensible and auditable hiring process, but also some of the worlds of ethics and what Christian is working on in the future, and some of his perspectives on where he sees the future of manufacturing and supply chain for that matter. So take a listen to this not so normal podcast, and let me know if you liked it or not. All right.
Welcome to Factor of the Future, people-powered alpha. Podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
It's funny, I was on a call with a gentleman that might be helping me with some sales, and his background was like in manufacturing and ISO and specifically automotive. And we started talking about AI, and we started having a conversation that very much felt like it should have been reserved for this meeting.
Yeah, so I do these about twice a month. Usually I get more turnout, but we know each other anyway. I can kind of explain what my other aspects in my lifestyle is into scholarly research. I am also a coach and a practitioner, and a lot of what I've been circling around is the transformation from what was world-class manufacturing to industrial 4.0 and 5.0. And particularly what I usually like to say is, I've been the one in the trenches. I was doing industrial 4.0 before you even had the term. Back in 2008, when we're doing project management and incorporating high-speed automation and sensors and cloud technologies, and before we even had the term. And since 2011, when it first came about, it's been just kind of it's a vague term. It's also saved the term the digitalization. But one of the things I've done speeches on is the next evolution, which is in Industrial 5.0. And the biggest difference is what we see is that this was developed by the European Commission back in 2021, when they saw that a lot of the industry standards and applying all this technology that the idea delivers on these aspirational things was having some shortfalls. And a lot of it was, one, it wasn't addressing a lot of the sustainability efforts. And the second one, it didn't really have a human-centric approach to it. And for me, that really resonated, because all the projects that I did out there, that was one of the main things, is getting buy-in from the stakeholders or those that are centered around the project or the new innovation that's come forward into it. So what I've been doing in last I guess 6 years is doing consulting. And a lot of times when I do this consulting, I mean, very similar to what probably you come across is they reach out to me, they have me come in, leadership has already identified the problem and they know the way to fix it. Unfortunately, it's often always the same thing. I'm going to say it is always the same thing. I'm very biased about it, and you're very to the point also. But and I've come around with a new approach where I'm particularly reaching out to individuals that have an interest into how technology is evolving and the maturity levels of those organizations. So I do these in roundtables, and one of the goals I'm hoping to do is bring into I'm working on it's a 3-hour workshop that I'm pulling together with like-minded individuals like yourself and other people that I reach out to join this conversation, where I share a lot of what I've found in some of my research that I'm working on, and just kind of eye-opening things of a resource to go to, of understanding that back in the 1960s up to maybe the 2000s, Toyota production systems, world-class manufacturing, TPM, lean methodologies, Six Sigma, they are proven results processes. However, we are a society today that we want to move fast, and those aren't necessarily the tools that executives, organizations want to pick through and go through these 18 to 2 year journeys. So one of the things that I put together is what is Industry 4.0. So you're incorporating technologies, but you're also bringing a human-centric and the people approach to it. So for me, I do these roundtables, and I give it an opportunity to talk about what have you seen out there's working. And for myself, I start off with is just I also do a lot with maintenance planning and scheduling. My organization is called the Maintenance Reliability Institute, and what we do is a lot with best practices in manufacturing maintenance reliability, and particularly I've had a lot of success in the planning and scheduling aspect of it, to the point where we're incorporating a new one where we're doing a mastermind class on the subject that we're putting together, particularly using AI as a planning and scheduling tool. That's I've brought it into a couple of workshops, and it's just been phenomenal how it can be used so strong to eliminate some of the work that a typical planner and scheduler goes through.
Are you using, so when you say you're using AI for that maintenance planning, is it integrating with an existing system? Is it a standalone system? Is it like a wrapper on and obviously if you can't give details on how it's built, but is it a standalone tool, like a SaaS platform? Is it a process? Like how are you, there's a lot of ways to integrate AI into a function like AI, that.
And it's just making them feel comfortable with it. Because a lot of the organizations, I'm surprisingly, they come into, and they're skeptical of it. And a lot of organizations, they don't allow it. So what I've been showing them is that a lot of these people in those organizations, they come up through the I'm going to say the ranks. They were a wrench turner, and then they don't necessarily like the hours, the climate, and they want to get more of a comfortable job in their later years. But unfortunately, they lack some of the capabilities that writing detailed plans, where the AI tool offers them both building the plans, but also you still need that subject matter expert to validation. And that's been part of what we do. And one of the outputs, especially in planning and scheduling, is the measurement of wrench time. And it's a lot of that is dictated on having a good plan and schedule. So that's a lot of what I do as far as some of the deliveries on that. But for me, kind of where I'm trying to go is in the 4.0. So working with the maintenance team, but also elevating it to the operations team, regional teams, and et cetera.
Yeah. You mentioned, the focus on human-centric processes, and the conversation that I was just having with the gentleman before this call, we were talking about actually a software that I had developed, which is for candidate screening. So it is an HR tool that is built to be a defensible, auditable layer between the broad general applicant screening and the final hiring decision. And the impetus for this, I'm seeing in the marketplace, I see AI disrupting everything it touches. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But in the labor market specifically, and in manufacturing, AI is only going to continue disrupting that subset of the labor market, which means that there's going to be a redistribution of talent. And so what you described, the trusted age-old operator that now has decided to move into a different position and has the experience, knows the process, knows the machines, knows the product, knows the layout, knows the people, but doesn't have the training or the skill set in higher level strategic management and planning. That redistribution of talent is going to force companies, factories, to ask very different questions during that hiring process, because before you were looking for a particular set of skills, and now that AI is taking over, and that sounds bad, but it's not always bad. AI is being introduced and used in certain areas. Those same skill sets are not what's in demand. And as we shift to a more human-centric hiring process, where it's less about the school you went to, or less about the letters at the end of your name, and less about which technical skills you have, because if I go into a job right now and say, I'm very good with Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and it's like, yeah, and every single AI is way better than you. So that is not a skill. We don't care about that. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for somebody that is good with Excel or good with PowerPoint, because AI does all of that. So what we really need are people that are adaptable, people that are innovative, people that ask good questions. We're looking for a different set of soft or power skills that is different from what we would have prioritized earlier when we had that technical need. So that's kind of like the shift that I'm seeing in the labor market for factories, is what happens when all these jobs get disrupted and people now have to figure out their new place in the organization, in the world, and start hopping to different places. You're going to have people exiting, and you're also going to have a lot of new positions being filled, or positions being filled with a different kind of candidate. And so that's why I built that software called TrueGem, because I saw that same thing. But I'm not in the robotics or high-speed automation. That's not my world. But people, processes, systems, that is. And so anyway, that's human-centric. That's the area that I'm focusing on, is what does that mean for the workforce, or the shift that's happening driven by AI.
Yeah. So let me ask, what is some of the pitfalls that you're seeing? I mean, you kind of concept some solutions that essentially adapt to this from HR, but where do you see some of the pitfalls in your technology that you've been?
Yeah. So, well, when you have an I call it a redistribution, because it's not going to be rampant unemployment. What's happening is that people are figuring out, discovering what their new role is and where they can add value in a world where AI is now taking ownership over some of those processes or tasks that humans used to have to do. And so that technical expertise is no longer valued the same way in the market. From the HR perspective, if you're trying to build your team, if you need to bring in quality management, a quality manager, you need to bring in a safety manager, environmental health and safety, if you're bringing a production manager, plant manager, if you're trying to figure out what the new shape of the organization looks like, you can't hire the way that you always did, because that was with a focus on either what education and experience you had and what technical skills you had. And now those things are not weighed the same way. So the question on what is actually important to evaluate in a candidate to make sure that they're going to be a good culture fit, to make sure they're going to be a good leadership fit, to make sure that they, yes, have some of the basic technical requirements, but that's no longer the key thing. And so a multi-dimensional approach to looking at your candidate pool and realizing that the value is in having a defensible process that you can go back a year from now and say, this is why we made this decision, because HR laws and bad hiring practice, you need to protect yourself, insulate against that risk. But honestly, the cost of a bad hire is staggering, and people don't realize how much time and effort is wasted if you don't do it right and you don't hire the right person for the right reasons. And that's changing, right? It's changing because of AI. So companies are still not really sure, okay, then what should I be looking for? What should I be asking? How do I even put a shape or a process to make sure that I'm doing this consistently so that I can actually get the right people out of my candidate pool?
I just read an article yesterday, and it was an academic article, and it was regarding the difference between the academic and the common workforce out there, especially those in technical knowledge, your 2 years or your whatnots. And from the research, I think there was 20 or so executive professionals within manufacturing, because I circle around that. One of the biggest concerns that the disconnect between the academics is they do a lot of the technical into it, but they've got really poor communication skills when they come out. And if anything, we all know is when you're coming out, you have to work together. Especially, I'm thinking of craftsmen, mechanics. They're always 2x2s, so or 1x1s, or partners up into it. And if you're not communicating well, you don't have the right kind of delivery or people skills, because they're going to be asked questions, and particularly if you want to move on into, like I said, the planners, schedulers. Those are usually kind of picked out a little bit. They've got to have some sort of capabilities because you have to work with people. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The other thing I found is, I read this also a couple days ago, is that a lot of the academics, a lot of the degrees are still in liberal arts or business management, and STEM has been relatively flat, where particularly in the manufacturing communities or in technology communities, that's a warning sign. And particularly as we grow into it, there's going to be possibly hitting a stone wall, and it goes offshores, or we're not bringing in the technologies that we could have brought in if we had the right resources and technologies into it. So I'd be curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, the aging workforce, that's another force at play. And it used to be, if you would have asked me 5-6 years ago, what happens in that scenario when you hit that wall, when you no longer have the depth of technical skill that we would like to have, and then the risk becomes offshoring? Absolutely. I mean, that was the story of globalization for at least the last 20 years. Now the question becomes, is this something that we offshore, or is this something that a different set of skills can scale it more effectively, more efficiently? So if I can't hire 10 engineers, can I hire 2 and equip them with the tools to do the job of 10? And that is now a realistic option, which it does require at least awareness. It requires a certain maturity in understanding of the AI space. It requires not falling for the next shiny thing or being so simple-minded as to think that, well, I gave him a chat GPT license. Isn't that enough? That's not what we're talking about here. But if you have that, you can get more done with fewer people. And that is an option now that wasn't really on the table 5 years ago. So I think that's a counterforce there that may slow down the offshoring. The thing that would still drive that is that if that same labor market or the workforce that exists outside the United States is also taking advantage of AI, then the question shifts to, well, can I have one senior person that doesn't have any technical skills, that has a lot of people and management skills, running a diversified team around the globe of 3 to 5 people that can do the job of 50, right? So the math, depending on what the actual task is, it's alluring, it's intriguing. There's a lot of potential there, but there's also the risk of getting it wrong. So old school manufacturing, when it comes to tasks that are high risk, they're probably less likely to jump on that overseas. For jobs that were in-house, let's say your preventative maintenance, right? You have, or health and safety. You're not going to outsource that to random person in another country to be responsible for the health and safety programs in your facility. So it depends on what kind of task we're talking. Administrative tasks, yes, sure. Customer service, call centers, scheduling, invoicing, collection, all types of administrative processes, those lend themselves well. But that concentration of talent has to be supplemented somehow. So if you don't have a lot of smart people applying for these critical roles within the factory, then where do you source them from? Maybe it is Bob that was the machinist for 15 years and knows and has a deep sense of not just loyalty, but familiarity with the why, with why we do what we do, how we've been doing it, how we got here. And then you can coach them up and equip them with the right tools to be able to do that job that is at the next level for him. And so that's a good example of the redistribution of talent versus an exodus.
Yeah, to your point, the baby boomers, or the Gen X is outpaced the baby boomers now. Mm-hmm. And there's a different type of personality that they have. But one thing, I guess I wanted to circle back with the AI that you were referring to as far as the HR. Mm-hmm. What makes it better than, I mean, here's my answer. I guess I haven't been applying for jobs for probably in a few years, but when I was, the idea was you apply and it's, I don't know, it's needle in that haystack that they
lottery. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lottery. Unless you reach out and find out who the hiring manager is, try to build a contact that way, or you already have sources into it. I can see AI as filtering that list down, but how would you say it would benefit in finding some of the right chemistry matches in your organization? Just a quick break, and then we'll get right back to the show. We are always open for meaningful sponsorship or guests that align with our audience. If your brand fits and would like to be on one of the top 10% podcasts in the world, let's chat. Reach out by email in the show notes. Back to the show.
So it doesn't, and that's the key. The software that I'm referring to that I built is not living at the stage where it's using AI to screen the applicant pool. It is a software that's designed to equip and empower the humans that are making the decisions once the initial wave has been filtered down to the candidate level. And it's actually not an AI tool on the front end. There's going to be later some AI analysis of data after the fact to be able to understand the correlation between the types of questions that you're asking, what your evaluation criteria are, and whether or not there exists some kind of extractable insight related to which questions yield the best hires. So this is like all post-hire retrospective analysis that's capable of doing, but the product itself is not an AI. There is no AI in the evaluation. There's no AI in the decision making. There's no AI at all in that process. It is strictly meant to help hiring teams better evaluate their candidates, the people that they actually decided are worth spending time on, doing interviews and scoring and then reading their full resume or showing it to more than just one person. We're not talking about the initial wave that hits when you put out a job on LinkedIn. You might get 50 applicants, and out of those 50, you might decide to only interview about 6 or 5. Those 6 or 5, now your people are spending real time on interviews, in panel discussions, figuring out like who do we want to invite to another round of interviews, or who's the person we want to actually make an offer to. That whole process is where it's all human centric, and it's also very vulnerable. It's very it's not structured. And so if I come back and say, well, you didn't hire me because I am a Hispanic male between the ages of 35 and 45, and I'm from New York, and you don't like New Yorkers, whatever, I can make any claim I want. And they go back and say, okay, well, show us how you made this decision. How did you decide that, Mark was better than Christian for this position? What's your process? How did you decide that? I don't know. We had conversations. We talked about it amongst ourselves. So you're telling me that your defense is water cooler conversation. Like, you just, no record, no nothing. How did you decide? That's the problem. And internally, that also leads to bad hires, because then the loudest voice in the room can sometimes win out. There's a whole bunch of different things that have to be solved for, especially even like reviewer anonymity. If you are invited in as a senior member or an executive as part of a hiring decision, we're hiring somebody for VP of finance, and we want you to sit in on the interview or help us evaluate these candidates. And you know that all your reviews are public, and people are going to like kind of scrutinize or maybe even second guess your reviews, and they can come back and say, hey, well, why did you evaluate him? Why did you give him a 5 on leadership? He has no experience. What was that all about? Or did you rank this person low because you didn't like their hairstyle? It creates a whole nother level of second guessing. So what the software does is it anonymizes that and says, no, we're going to invite reviewers, and their reviews are anonymous. And what the hiring manager sees is an average, like an aggregate score of the different reviews for that person. And it highlights when there's like disparity or disagreement among those domains, who are the priority leaders, where are the risk factors. It does it in a way that gives everybody the freedom to evaluate, but also creates a defensible and auditable record of how the process was done. And so again, it's all human centric. It is not an AI tool.
So at the end, you've got a quantitative
result? Yep. So there's a talent database that keeps track of all the different people that applied for the position and what their scores were. So with enough data, right, with enough use, we can go back and say, well, where did these candidates come from? Did they come from LinkedIn? Did they come from a recruiting agency? Did they come from an internal referral? How does this subset of the population candidates score amongst culture, technical, leadership skills? And can we now, after doing this for a while, extract some insight on whether or not the questions that we're asking are leading to good hires, which you can then cross-reference with like, internal promotion records, who's stayed at the company, longevity, all those types of things are possible, but only if you have a repeatable, structured process that you can use as a data set to compare across other data points. That's where I see AI is useful, not in the decision-making process of who gets hired.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I don't think there's a lot. I haven't done a lot of research into that, so I can't really speak on the hiring process. Other than I don't think it's very good yet. I think it's gotten even worse. But that's just my thought on it.
This came from my experience when I was serving as the director of operations. I was invited into a lot of hiring decisions, even if the person wasn't going to be my direct report. And what I saw was every single time it felt like we were doing it for the first time. Well, how many people are we inviting? How many people need to sit on there? What are we asking? Are we all asking the same questions? Are we going to score them? Are we evaluating them? Are we just having a conversation and deciding informally who we think is best? Are we doing one-on-ones? What is going on here? So again, 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, good luck explaining or defending that process if something was ever called into question. And to me, that was like the big flaw in the process that I saw when I was sitting in that role. And I decided to build something to solve it.
We talk about this, and I was just bibliography on Elon Musk. One of the things that he interviews most of the employees that he hires, which is a huge amount. But if you have to imagine that if you're bringing in a candidate that you think is hire worthy, and you bring it to Elon Musk, they prep him, it's like, don't worry if he's not paying. It looks like he's not paying attention. He's looking down, doing something else. He will ask questions at the end, and but at the end of it, you certainly want that strong candidate because you're putting your name on it at that point. So I think that is probably a still strong tool. I've been part of those in a little bit, but just for the fact he goes through that many interviews is pretty impressive. My aspect of it.
Oh yeah, because he understands that an AI. Elon is no rookie to the world of AI, but he understands that there are still certain things that are better suited for human evaluation and nuance, being able to pick up on what we call a vibe, being able to pick up on someone's presentation style, their communication style. AI doesn't pick up on that. AI just converts it into text and figures out the pattern. But if someone shows up and you're hiring them for a sales position, that's very different than a back-end office position. And when you're interacting with that person, that's when you're going to be making different types of calculations and determinations on this person's hire worthiness that AI cannot do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. It's fun. I brought it up because I'm like, AI is going to be the one of the factors that drives this redistribution of talent, which then creates an even more urgent need for these types of tools. There's going to be more hiring activity. Everybody's talking about how people are losing their jobs. What they're not talking about is that when someone loses their job, humans are not built to just give up, bury our head in the sand, and call it a day. If you lost your job right now, would you, God forbid, take your life? No, you'd probably go out there and figure out what other job you could apply to where your skills, your experience would be an asset to that company, and you're going to go apply to different places. So as AI takes some of those tasks and makes it so that we don't need as many people focused on that type of work, there's going to be a redistribution and a flurry of hiring activity. And now you have a labor market that has a lot of highly skilled individuals that need to find a new home doing a different thing. And in order to pick up the right people and scoop them up, you got to ask a different set of questions. And you got to show what those questions were and be able to stand by it and defend it.
Good.
But so that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been working on since we last spoke.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.